Hi everyone, my name is Tommy Mangus. Today I'll be discussing Mrs. Doubtfire, a film that makes us laugh and yet also makes us cry, showing what happens when negotiation fails. It's about a father, Daniel Hillard, who disguises himself as a British housekeeper after his wife files for divorce and wins full custody of their three children. While it's a comedy, the heart of the movie is all about conflict, communication, and the desire to be heard. Now, this movie came out in 1993. It was produced by Century Fox, had Robin Williams, Sally Field, and Pierce Brosnan in it. It's a heartfelt story about a father's dedication to his children and the lengths that he will go to maintain a relationship with them, even with a challenging divorce. All of my images have been sourced from Getty Images, and I've included a works cited page at the end of my slideshow for those of you who are interested in finding out more information. Now let's talk about the conflict and negotiation that happens in the movie Mrs. Doubtfire. One of the biggest battles is their main conflict. This is Daniel and his ex-wife Miranda in the very beginning. They had no formal negotiation really happening, just demands, a lot of emotional outbursts. Miranda sees Daniel as irresponsible. Daniel feels dismissed and slightly heartbroken. Divorce is about ready to happen, and they're both digging into their positions. Now, the legal system will become the default maker, that main decision maker. But right now, we see informal negotiations happening in their arguments, in Daniel's deception, and later in the movie during his transformation. Remember, this is where Daniel gets angry in the movie and he says, I'm their father, all right? Their father. I'm not a freak. He's having trouble. He's highly emotional and he doesn't want to see things from any other perspective except for his own. The more attention that's paid to positions, the less attention is devoted to meeting the underlying concerns of the parties. That's what we learn in our book, in our chapter. Fisher, Ury, and Patton on page 7 taught us that. Let's move on to the first negotiation concept that I saw in the movie. One of the biggest negotiation failures early in the film is when Daniel and Miranda decide to argue from fixed positions. What that means is what they want rather than why they want it. Miranda wants stability and Daniel wants time with the kids, but they don't talk about their interests. That's key in getting to the yes. Fisher and Ury remind us your position is something you have decided upon. Your interests are what caused you to so decide. Maybe if they had been able to discuss why those things were so important to them, it would have made it a little bit easier. However, that was not the case. Remember this concept? Positions are what people say they want. Interests are the why behind those positions, and negotiation should focus on interest to uncover their shared goals. I mean, really, both of them just wanted their kids. They wanted time with their kids and they wanted their kids to be well taken care of. They just couldn't see the other person's perspective, I guess you could say. Now, the second concept that I saw, this one was just crazy, and it's really what made the movie so great. And that was, well, when we decided to do some things a little different and invent options for mutual gain. That's another key concept in getting to the yes, right? The importance of brainstorming options for the mutual gain. Daniel kind of skips this entirely and he jumps to a very deceptive solution. Instead of proposing creative alternatives, instead, he becomes Mrs. Doubtfire, right? He decides that he is going to invent this radical, brand new housekeeper slash child care provider. And they've got a British accent, they're older, they're female, and he takes on this entire persona just so that he can get what he wants. He just wants to be with his kids, and he's been told no, so he's trying to figure out any way to make that happen. So I'm not so sure this was the greatest choice of his, but it worked, right? And it made the movie so much fun. Now, this reminds us where we're supposed to separate the act of inventing options from the act of judging them. And that is going to be found on page 60 in our book. I was really pleasantly surprised when I realized this was part of a negotiation tactic while I went back and rewatched the movie. It was very intriguing to me. Now let's move on to the third concept that I found in the movie. This is an objective criteria. And this actually plays back to the beginning part of the movie when Miranda and Daniel are in court and the judge is, trying to decide what he's going to do and where he's going to place the kids. He couldn't really think about anybody's emotions. He had to use fair standards. He had to be, independent, no emotional bias. Even when Daniel stood up in the courtroom and he said, "I'm addicted to my children, sir. I love them with all of my heart." And the concept of someone telling me I can't be with them, it's like someone saying I can't have air. Now, normally that would be just an emotional comment that would make somebody stop and think about what they were going to do or the decisions that they were going to make, but not in this case. This was negotiation concept number 3, right? Using an objective criteria. We learned about this in chapter 4, and you have to use fair standards. The grounding of a negotiation in shared standings, not emotions or blame, will ultimately bring resolution. And we see that later in the movie, right? The resolution, it worked, and everybody ended up being happy, I guess you could say, at the end. But this is an important part of the negotiation concept, and that is that you have to use independent, fair standards to make sure that we've got, no bias and we've got trust involved. So a great movie, Mrs. Doubtfire, and there really were a lot of negotiation tactics that went into this movie. These were just a few that I could bring to light, especially through chapters 1 through 4 in the book that we have been reading. And it has just been a lot of fun. So I've added this quote here at the end, and I think that it's very fitting for what we've been dealing with and the stuff we've been talking about with chapters 1 through 4 in our Getting the Yes. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. That is Peter Drucker from Mrs. Doubtfire. Again, my name is Tommy Mangus. I hope you've enjoyed this fun little presentation. Have a great day.